Well, welcome back to It's an Inside Job podcast. I'm your host, Jason Lim. Now, this podcast is dedicated to helping you to help yourself and others to become more mentally and emotionally resilient so you can be better at bouncing back from life's inevitable setbacks. Now, on It's an Inside Job, we decode the science and stories of resilience into practical advice, skills, and strategies that you can use to impact your life and those around you. Now, with that said, let's slip into the stream. Well, welcome back to the show. I appreciate you showing up for another week. In this episode, it is attached to that series where I talk to entrepreneurs about their mindset. One of the aspects I find so intriguing about the entrepreneurial mindset is that entrepreneurs are able to take ideas, dispersed ideas, and to blend them, to take traditional ways of looking at things and breaking them down to find something new. It's also to bend ideas into new shapes and new formulas that we can use to create new business entities, new ideas, new innovative thinking and technologies. And another interesting and intriguing aspect of the startup mindset is the ability to face adversity, to throw yourself in the midst of the storm of challenges and change and problems and hiccups and fallbacks. And it's that ability to pick themselves up and move forward, to learn from their failures, their foul-ups, their mistakes, and to re-engineer their thinking and their attitude and their approach to whatever it is that they are trying to solve. And so I'm very privileged to have one of those mindsets to explore this week. Well, this week I am joined by Torbjørn Krogen. We are going to discover his adventure through the world of business and technology. Now, Torbjørn has a diverse background that includes serving in the army, managing businesses, and starting up his own ventures. Now, Torbjørn has a wealth of experience in the technology domain spanning 2 decades. He has a natural talent for leadership, having held positions from startup to C-level, and founded several tech startups that cover a wide range of fields, from software applications and apps to hardware and robotics. As the CEO and co-founder of Solwr, it is a Norwegian-based logtech company, meaning logistics technologies. He has pushed the boundaries of innovation and success. During the pandemic, Torbjørn didn't let a global crisis slow him down. Instead, he used it as an opportunity to turn around a failing software company and develop a world-class robotics startup. By merging the 2 companies under Solwr brand, he successfully brought the innovative products to the market. But success wasn't easy to come by. Torbjørn faced numerous leadership challenges and made plenty of mistakes along the way. He experienced countless stressful events that tested his resilience and taught him valuable lessons. However, through it all, he credits his incredible colleagues and high-performing teams for helping achieve his goals and to surpass his own expectations. If you're looking for an inspiring example of a true business leader who never backs down from a challenge, well, I'm sure today's episode and Torbjørn's story is sure to captivate you. So without further ado, let's slip into the stream and meet Torbjørn Krogen. Well, Torbjørn Krogen, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you being able to show up today. I was wondering if we could begin this conversation. Maybe you could introduce who you are and what you focus on.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, for letting me take part of this podcast series. I have my background a long time ago as an army officer. The last 15, 20 years, I've been working within technology and business development, funding a couple of companies within that space. I think I have a background is set up with both the hard side of business with skills such as finance and marketing, sales, but also the soft skills that I think I brought with me from the army, working with people and building strong teams, paying attention to how to develop and get the best out of my colleagues. It's not, as I say, I always succeed, but I think I have that mindset at least.
Perhaps you could paint us a picture about your military background, what you're about, and then we can sort of take it from there to lead us up to present day.
Yes. Yeah, my military background is within recon platoons. So
recon being reconnaissance for
reconnaissance, yes.
Yeah.
So it's small units working independently, far away from any other units. So you're supposed to be able to take care of yourself and your team. And I think how you are trained and how you are selected to these kind of units, I think they look for people that are able to be independent, able to take decisions, and try to have the ability to understand the big pictures and how you can influence the big picture just as a small part of it. I think that is really important. And also the selection process is, of course, as in many other disciplines within the Army, you're supposed to be
I would presume it's very vigorous.
Yeah, you have to be self-motivated. You need to prove that you're able to keep it going despite all constraints and all the challenges that they throw at you. And I think that builds some kind of character. And I think I've learned a lot from that.
And how many years did you work as a reconnaissance specialist?
I was on different levels for 10 years, about 10 years. A soldier, and then as an NCO, sergeant, and then as an officer. And my career as an officer in a long-range reconnaissance platoon.
Okay. And in that 10-year career, in your military career within reconnaissance at different rank levels, in long-range reconnaissance, was there any sort of theaters of conflict in which you served?
No, I trained people to go abroad. It was at the early 2000s. So, of course, Afghanistan was just about to start the missions to Afghanistan. So, but I left the Army around that time. So I spent some time in Lebanon, South Lebanon. But besides from that, I didn't take any part in any foreign operations.
So in Lebanon, what did you learn about yourself during your service there?
I was quite young when I went there, and I think I learned that as a young, naive guy from Ålesund in Norway, haven't seen much of the world, and then traveling abroad, experience area of conflict like that, expands your view in several ways, but it gives me perspectives on how people live in other countries, of course, but also that there are usually no black and white. There is not good and bad. There are a lot of ambiguity in this conflict. And in between, there are civilians that only struggle to live their lives. It was an eye-opener for me because you tend to only read the things that you read in the newspaper or wherever and build your own view of the world. And traveling abroad, experience this at an early stage of my life gave me an understanding that things are not always as they seem. So you need to experience them yourself.
And experience is the best teacher. We can, as you said, the newspapers give us a glimpse of what's going on, but it's only a sliver of the entire perspective. As you said, there's such a nuance. There's a lot of gray area between the black and white, as many of us can tend to see the world. And so serving in Beirut or any soldier serving anywhere, as I've talked to other soldiers, is that exactly, it's very nuanced. There's a lot of ambiguity in between the black and the whites, the night and the day. I'd like to talk about reconnaissance and leadership. Since you taught these squads to go out to this long range and some of these hairy theaters of operations in the world, such as Afghanistan. When it comes to communication reconnaissance, one of the things that I've learned through the military is sort of centralized command, decentralized control. Could you elaborate on that and how important that is for a reconnaissance team that's far away from any base or any other connections with other squads or platoons?
Yeah, I think a reconnaissance patrol really is a good example of how the importance of that works in real life. I use this commander's intent, and as you know, probably know, you're supposed to at least understand and know the commander's intent 2 levels above you. And our patrols, they were working for the division commander. And I remember that we brought the patrols into the division commander's headquarters, and they got their introduction and brief directly from the division commander's staff. And they got the whole picture of the operational theater. And I think by giving them the ability to understand the whole theater and their little part of that theater also gave them the ability to understand the intent of why were we going where we are going, and why did I think that this is a good approach to solve the mission, and also giving them the ability to adapt if things change, as they always do. The teams knew enough about why they were going there to adapt to any changes and move to other areas or find other ways to solve the mission, because they knew the intent of the mission. And I think that's really important in all organizations, that the people need to know why. And it's not a new thing, but it really get very concise in these situations.
I think that's a salient point you've made. I mean, it seems obvious, but sometimes people don't manage expectations, or what we call commander's intent. Just to clarify, commander's intent is to explain what is the purpose and why we need it. And as you said, to give the bigger picture, so they understand that small team or that small squad understands their role in the bigger picture, what the result they're trying to achieve. But as you said, commander's intent is for the leader, such as yourself, to communicate what and why of the mission or the objective. But the how is left to the team. And that's where the decentralized control is, where a squad, even if they get cut off, they understand the bigger picture and they can make the decision of how to get there. But you create sort of the sandbox, as I understand, and they can figure out how they have to get from point A to B. Is that what I understand? Yeah,
that's correctly. And I think that's something you learn also or hear about in modern technology organizations, where I try to develop autonomous teams that are able to work on what you would call a commander's intent or a purpose. And I think bringing that insight into our operations here in Solwr, where I work as a CEO today, has given us the ability to develop autonomous teams. But I also think it's really important to stress the point that giving autonomy to a team doesn't mean that you give them full autonomy. You need to set the direction, and you need to set some borders. You can work within this space. You have these kind of resources. This is the purpose of your for your mission. This is the expected end state of your mission. What we expect. This is the direction you're going to work. Because I think autonomy without any direction will only bring chaos. So some kind of structure you need.
And so when you were teaching these reconnaissance teams and you were communicating the what and why, can you describe the ability for them to ask questions? Were they allowed to ask questions as to, okay, what is the end point? What is the impact we're trying to achieve?
Definitely. It's within these operations, you spend a lot of time planning and preparing for the operation. And depending on the time that is, of course, available, you could plan a mission for weeks. But you should also, of course, be able to plan it within 5 minutes. We usually made set up these special rooms where you can secure rooms where you could plan your mission. You could, the team had their everything from maps and weather forecast, all their kit, everything they needed to be prepared for the mission, and they went through it step by step. Planning everything that they were supposed to do, and spent a lot of time in preparing. And they talked the walk, and then we walked the talk. So you did dry runs on everything from insertion to the who was supposed to do what, and you tried out everything, sort of.
You trialed around
on dry
everything.
line.
Yeah.
You made, of course, contingency plannings as well, and everybody knew all these within the team, and of course the commander were usually inside and getting running updates on their planning process, and so you really knew and understood how they were thinking, and also knew really well their contingency plans, so you could, from a control center, understand what the team were doing in case of, let's say all comms were lost, or they hit some contacts, and we knew what they were supposed to do and could plan for extractions or things like that.
Again, what I'd want to do, obviously, here is to understand the sort of the military communication, how important that is, because these are lives and limbs that are at risk. And so I'd like to explore a little more about the communication. So when a long-range reconnaissance team was out in the field, how often would they have to communicate back to headquarters or to their commander?
At least back in my days, you had radios that you had high frequency radios. I guess they probably have better comms now, but it took some while to set it up, and you could transmit the message across the globe if you wanted. But windows of transmitting messages were reduced because you didn't want to be found out by the
discovered from the signals or what have you.
Yeah. You have signals intelligence that try to locate any radios in the operational area. So we reduced the time on the radio, and we transmit messages. It's digital messages. That's a burst of encrypted texts. But usually you have set up reporting scheme that you follow. So you report a successful drop-off when you are safe after the infiltration, to the infiltration point. And then you have set up maybe every 4th hour, or you can have once every 6th hour, or once a day, if that is. It all depends on the scenario or on the situation.
I guess it's tailored depending upon the specific mission or the objective. Because the reason why I wanted to speak about that, because I think that comes back down to that term we know as situational awareness, where we need to constantly update each other, where it has to go up the chain of command and down the chain of command, so there is an alignment. And that period of checking, I guess it was very important to be able to constantly give updates as to what was going on.
Yeah, but it also depends on, we of course need to know about the situation within the team if there is any problems with that, but usually it's just an okay sign. So they are okay. They transmit any intelligence that they come across, like if they observe any enemy movements or groupings and positions.
I was just wondering, so once they're out in the field, they've completed the objective, then they come back and there's a debrief. Because all of this is important, because what we've talked about at the trailhead of this conversation was the commander's intent, communicating the what and why of the objective of the mission. They were allowed to ask questions, but at the end of the day, they had to become autonomous and be able to figure out what they had to do in the missions. In case there was a mission communication blackout, or they came in contact with enemy or what have you, insurgents, that they couldn't communicate, but they understood what the objective was. They just had to figure out how we implement this. And then there was a check-in every now and then, depending on, to give situational awareness. And sometimes it was a burst of transmission just to say, we are okay, we are somewhere here, or what have you. But at the end of the mission, when there is the debrief, what is included in that, and why is the debrief important?
I think the debrief is important for many reasons, but we use it mainly to let people ventilate, and then, of course, have to increase our knowledge of and competences on what we should learn from these operations, and how we could take some lessons learned from this and bring it into the whole squad squadron, and let all the other patrols also learn from it. So we share. Every time we had this, we said, this was really good lessons learned, and these are the things we're never going to do again. And then we also have direct feedback within the team that were never shared, but only the team shared feedback on each other's performance. But I also tried to extract some lessons learned that we could share internally and develop our operational procedures based on some lessons that we made.
A lot of organizations, a lot of teams, a lot of leaders can actually learn from the military of how they do things. You know, from the pre-planning missions to coming with contingency plans or how to mitigate risk to create a plan B. So actually out in the field, when the operation's happening, when the project's being built or what have you, there's a check-in. People are autonomous, but they're just not running alone. They understand the objective. And then there's the debrief of understanding where people get to vent and talk about their frustrations, their worries, their success, so they can articulate their emotions and their thoughts. But as you also said, it's the lessons learned as to lessons of the success, so we can repeat, and lessons of whatever, setbacks or mishaps where we can adapt for next time. How have you applied a lot of the lessons you've taught to, you know, these soldiers and these operations? And how have you taken these lessons and knowledge and wisdom to your current position as CEO of Solwr?
Well, I think it's always in the back of my head. I think one of the most important parts of my experience is selection. In Solwr, we are about 100 employees today. I'm involved in many of the selection and recruitment processes because I need to meet these people and see that they would fit into the company. A lot of my experience from selection and just by trying to understand people is used in that part. I also spend time in developing these autonomous teams. Tried to do that in many parts of the company. Some successful and some not successful. And I learned that it also depends, of course, about the background of the employees. In a military context, everybody has more or less the same background, the same operational procedures. There is a language that you learn and you're like kind of socialized into this organization. But in a civilian organization, people tend to come from all over, with a different schooling, educational background, different professional backgrounds. And you have people that are software developers working together with marketing people. They are totally different. I think I can bring a lot of experience from a military context into technology company, but it is still not just plug and play. And you need to consider that you have much more variety in such a company. That's at least my experience.
In the first part of our conversation, Torbjørn talked about his life as a reconnaissance leader, teaching squads to go in behind enemy lines to do recon. And with that comes a lot of expertise, comes a lot of experience that serves him well in his current position. You know, we talked about centralized command, decentralized control. Centralized command being that you speak about the what and the why of the mission, letting them know the end state, the end point, and why it is important, and how it fits into the bigger picture. Well, decentralized control means it's up to the squad, it's up to the soldiers out in the field to decide how to implement. We also talked about situational awareness, constantly updating up the line and down the line to find alignment, to make sure that everyone's on the same page with the same sentence. And that is so important when it comes to coordinating logistics, communication, and engagement with whatever they need to engage with. Torbjørn also talked about commander's intent. And commander's intent is just that. What is the intention? What is the intention of the mission? What is the intention of the objective? Why is it relevant? How does it fit into the big picture? How does their role have impact and meaning to the end result? And what is that end result? And the general idea of this is that the squad, the team, the project leader, and his or her team are able to adapt when things go sideways. And things do have a tendency to go sideways more often than not. What I thought was also important was Torbjørn's philosophy about developing autonomous teams. Not 100% autonomous teams, but where he or his managers need to follow up every now and then. And it's not about micromanaging, it's about if new information becomes available, everybody needs to know about it so we can stay aligned. And that comes back to that situational awareness. And as Torbjørn eloquently said, we talk the walk, then we walk the talk. And in this second part of the conversation, Torbjørn talks about his philosophy for hiring for attitude and training for skills. That it's always more important to hire people that have antennas, those psychosocial emotional antennas that are strong and are able to read the environment. And we also talk about the super relevance of developing a feedback culture, which is based on psychological safety and a psychological sound working environment. So let's slip into the stream into part 2. I was wondering, could you just briefly describe Solwr, what it does, and what is its main mission, if we can call it that, in a military context?
Yeah. Solwr is a logtech company. That's logistical technologies. We develop both software, like traditional ERP software for logistics operations, and also we develop robotic solutions for warehousing. It's been developed since 2016 when I started the robotic part of the company. I've been the CEO for that, and we merged together with a traditional software company in 2020, and then we built this Solwr Group together. We have similar customers, and we are gradually developing joint value propositions to the market. So our aim is to bring new technology to that traditional trading industry.
So I want to dive more into the company and understand how the DNA of resilience is at your company. What is your process of trying to find the right people?
What I look for is attitude, and I ask the HR department not to be too strict on selecting on the formal competencies, because I think that if you have some educational background or professional background where you prove that you are able to learn new stuff, then you have the right attitude. I think we can train you for these new skills that you probably need, and I think that is also the future for any organization, that you probably hire for attitude and train for skills, because the technology develops so fast now, and you need people that are eager and interested in learning new things all the time, and constantly looking for the new technologies, trying out new stuff. You can't just rely on technologies that are years behind. So, of course, you need to find a balance here. You can't always try to hit on the new stuff. There's always a new flavor of the week, but I guess you get my drift.
I think it's a very salient point, what you're saying, Torbjørn, because one thing is you can hire for competency and education, and they could score the highest. But if they don't have the attitude to learn to adapt to new challenges and new things, such as a tech company such as yours that are constantly coming at you. And we can explore that in a second. But I think also a very important element is finding, as you said, a person with the right attitude, but they have to be socially, emotionally intelligent. They need to be able to interact, collaborate with other people, meaning that they can have tough conversations when they have to. They have to stand up for certain things and hold people accountable. But at the same time, they have the psychological sense, the social antennas to do it in a diplomatic and direct way where they are able to collaborate, cooperate, and communicate. Working as a coach per se in many different companies, I see that as some of the most important skills that any professional can have. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think by hiring for aptitude and training for skills such as we have been doing for many years now, it also built an organization that has that kind of cultural DNA, because we hire people, we can see that they have the willingness to stay in a struggle, stay in the battle, eagerness to achieve success together with other people. It's been, I'm really proud of that organization. It's a really resilient organization, because they lift each other up, and they motivate each other, and they set higher targets themselves than we do. So
I can see you're a man that's very proud of that, because I can see the smile crack across your face. And I mean, this is obviously an audio format, but we're doing this across Zoom, and I think that speaks volumes to that. I really like that, hiring for attitude training skills. And so if we come back to, you were saying developing autonomous teams. And again, that's based on your military background with communications and creating cohesive teams. Can you speak a little to developing autonomous teams, and how does that show up at your company?
We spend a lot of time trying to make people aware of the end state, where we're going, trying to get them to understand we are a product company, we develop products, then it's really important to understand what that product is. And what I've seen is that, of course, it's really much easier to do that when it comes to robotic solutions that are crystal clear in both in what they are supposed to achieve. And it's much easier to understand the physical product than when it comes to software products, where it's much more intangible. There's a lot of different functionalities that you could include in a software such as ours, and being able to communicate the product vision within that field, I think it is much harder. But and that's also probably why we struggle more with achieving autonomy within these teams than within the robotics fields. And something we need to work on continuously, being much better at communicating the expected end state or the purpose of the products, because that's why we are here, developing products that actually creates value to the customers.
Coming back to performance, how important is a feedback culture within Solwr?
Yeah, I think feedback is really important if you want to learn from your as you progress and as you have constantly lessons learned every day. So feedback is important. I think there's a combination of psychological safety within the company, and if you have, and also the feedback culture obviously correspond to each other. If you don't have any psychological safety, then you will probably struggle to have at least a good feedback culture. So we've been working on that safety part for a long time now, and I think we have much more to do on the feedback culture, getting more formalized within that. Today we have arenas where we can do that, but I see that we should improve that part going forward.
To have a feedback culture, the foundation is psychological safety. It's having that stability in which to confront people, to hold people accountable, whether it's corrective feedback or supportive feedback. But could you kind of paint us a picture? What do you and your team or your people do to create a psychologically safe and sound working environment?
Yeah, I think this starts with the CEO. If I walk around and challenge people with and confront people in a way that creates uncertainty, they themselves will get stressed. And they probably behave the same way to their colleagues, and then you just create a bad working environment. I think it's important to challenge people, but you need to do it on the right point in time and at the right situations, and of course in a manner that is not aggressive. One should be able to find the balance between challenging and also pinpointing and where people has not done a very good job. At the same time, showing that you made this error today, but that doesn't mean that your whole professional career is an error. You are a value for us still. So sure. Let's learn from these things instead of just chopping each other's heads off. So that's I think that is the CEO's. It is mine responsibility to take care of the culture in the company, and per se, it's also my responsibility to take care of each other's safety and perceived safety within the company. Yeah, I think I think going in and looking into the communication within the teams. I spent some time giving feedback to people who do not communicate in a good way. They've been working very well, I'm glad to say, but being close to teams where you have some struggles, when you can pinpoint situations where you can easily see the culture would be derailed if not the CEO or some management with authority could say that this is not acceptable. You cannot communicate in this way to each other, and set some examples by that. I've had to do that several times, but I also see that people learn from it, and I think they also appreciate it after.
Well, I think just to kind of rewind, I think at Solwr, you create psychological safe teams. And I think part of creating a resilient, robust organization comes back down to a lot of things you said. First of all, is creating autonomous teams, where when people feel a sense of autonomy, that means they can apply their education and skills to build something, right? And they have a constant check-in. I think also is that you create a sense of certainty. You tell them what the intent is, why the intent is, what is the end point. And through the constant communication and the feedback, when you can create certainty, that creates stability, and then people can move forward. And when you give them autonomy, they feel their confidence boosts because it shows that you trust them, that they feel value connected, and they feel a sense of security that they can deliver something. I think also what's also important that you're talking about, Torbjørn, is the ability where they can question things, where they can try to understand. So there is this sort of back and forth. It's playing with communication to understand situational awareness, what the expectations are, and to manage those expectations. And I think the other one is that you allow them to exert effort. They can try things out, and they don't get their heads bitten off or get their heads cut off, as you said, if they make a mistake. People don't always like it, but that's normal. But the question is, how do we learn from it? Obviously, it's also the attitude of the people. You hire for attitude, and training can come on the job. Is that what I understand you've communicated?
Yeah, I think so. Another thing that I want to point out is that I really appreciate with an organization and within our organization is humor. I think we spend a lot of time reducing the stress level by being informal, approachable, and also using humor as both the way to give feedback that is not, they understand the feedback, but it's not aggressive, and it's easier to accept the feedback if you wrap it into some kind of funny joke. For my part and my leadership, I use a lot of humor, and I'm aware of the power distance in the organization. I have very many young employees, then and I need to reduce the threshold for them to approach me, and being informal when I meet them, and open and inviting to conversations on all topics, all subjects. I think that also builds some kind of safety within the organization, and I use a lot of that.
I think that's a very astute point that, maybe a lot of managers don't always consciously think about. It is the power differential. It's that difference. And as you said, if you can use humor to sometimes give, lighter feedback, and a lot of feedback is not always serious and heavy, is informal feedback. A great majority of it is just a small feedback back and forth. And if you can wrap it up in humor, as you said, it brings down that power differential. It's just two people talking about how can we improve this or how can we move something forward. Is that what I understand you're communicating?
Yeah. I also sometimes see that the organization is a little bit stressed. If I come into a team, they're stressed out, and I also can use dark humor. Like, even though things are dark, you can just try to cheer them up a little bit, and of course, new employees sometimes probably think I'm quite weird or whatever, but I learned to know me.
Yeah.
But I use this intentionally.
Yeah. Gallows humor, dark humor has its place too. I agree. I'm just respectful of your time, Torbjørn. I was just wondering, a lot of you leading two companies, you were leading two companies, they've been merged, and there's a lot of moving parts. It's very complicated. I was wondering, how do you maintain personal resilience? I mean, what do you specifically do to find stability, to find calm in a very sometimes chaotic business?
I think there's a lot of things that I do, but obviously the number one thing is to take care of my health. If I'm not healthy, I'm not able to run the company. So I pay attention to how I feel every day. If I feel that my batteries are low, I need to charge them. And I know that I really know that there are no superhumans out there. And maybe a little bit from my background tend to make me drive, even though when I have challenges. And I've learned that I should be aware of that trait in myself, because it can run me out without me being noticing it before it's too late. So I actually spend a lot of time to just check in with myself. And if I feel that I'm really down on batteries, I try to take a day out. So every Sunday, I do not look at work at all. I work about 10 hours a day, and a couple of hours every Saturday. But Sunday, I don't open the PC. I don't try not to work at all. And,
it's your day of rejuvenation, or just logging off?
Yeah, I need at least one day in the week to not do anything, and then I can put all my energy in the other days. And of course, I'm not alone. I have a good team with me here at Solwr that really reduces the stress on me. We delegate between each other, help each other out. So that's, of course, really important. I would never be able to do this if I didn't have my management team. And back home, you have my wife. That's really good at challenging me. Just like as a coach, we spend a lot of time talking about things, and I really appreciate that. Helps me to structure my thoughts. And then finally, I take long walks with my dog. Every day I walk at least an hour or half an hour, and really gives me time to think. And I need that.
As you said, you have a team that you've built over time. You've been able to have sort of that selection of people, to find the people that can challenge you, that are not just all yes men and yes women, but that there's a trust and there's a transparency and a communication where you can delegate work and where you can have hard discussions about problems, as I understand it. Then there's the sort of the physiological point where you can just disconnect and you're moving and you take care of your health and you kind of check in with yourself a lot of the times. And I think as you said, with your wife, you're able to vent your emotions and your thoughts to kind of sort through the process. And maybe she doesn't say anything. She just challenges you with questions. But a lot of the times it may be you hearing your thoughts out loud for the first time. And that's when insights tend to pop. When I see I'm coaching clients, is when they are talking out loud. It's the first time they may have, as I said, heard themselves out loud. I was wondering, is there any last advice or thoughts you could give to leaders or young people coming up through the game?
Reflecting on the past part that we discussed now, I think you need to take care of number one. Take care of yourself. If you're not able to take care of yourself, you will not be able to take care of your team and your organization. So check in with yourself. Take care of yourself. Don't think that you're superhuman, but of course you can try.
Until the wall tells you you're not.
Yeah.
Well, Torbjørn Krogen, Torbjørn, thank you very much for your time and sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, your background, and your experience with us. And I've learned a lot of salient points and lessons that I can take away with myself.
That was a real pleasure.
Well, folks, that was Torbjørn Krogen, CEO of Solwr. And a personal thank you to you, Torbjørn, for spending some time with us today and sharing your knowledge and your experience. It is very, very much appreciated. If any of you are out there interested in Solwr solutions or in Torbjørn Krogen's philosophy, his leadership, his entrepreneurial mindset, please reach out to him. I will leave all his contact information in the show notes. Torbjørn talked about a lot of different subjects and made a lot of salient points. And in this last part, one of the major things that stood out to me was that power differential. And sometimes as a leader, we don't always realize that when we walk into our room. Like our reputation, that power dynamic is already there in that room. And part of good leadership, part of leadership resilience, is understanding and being cognizant to that power differential. And being conscious of lowering that threshold means it becomes easier for people to give feedback, to reach out for help and resources when they're stuck, to ask for help when they need to find a way forward. And at the end of the day, isn't that what managers and leaders are there to do, to empower their people to do their job, to move forward, to grow, to develop? Well, that was one of the most salient points for me, is just understanding the power difference and then trying the best we can is to shrink that. And by being aware of this adds to that psychological sound workplace that we're all searching for to create a sense of psychological safety. Well, anyways, folks, that brings us to the tail end of another episode. I appreciate you showing up as you do every week. If you have the chance, if you could please rate, subscribe, and review this episode and the podcast, I'd really appreciate it. And another call to action, if you could share this with 2 friends, 2 colleagues, 2 family members, you'd be doing me a big favor. But until next week, till the next time we meet and we share some ideas together, keep well, keep strong, and we'll speak soon.